Meet Kane. He's a teacher and a parent who, like many in his profession, is looking for a way to reclaim his evenings from the mountains of grading and planning that consume his life outside the classroom. The arrival of large language models initially triggered a wave of anxiety across education, centered on the idea that these systems would eventually render human educators obsolete. After interviewing dozens of teachers and school leaders, Kane noticed a consistent pattern. The most successful users weren't treating the software as a replacement, but as a tool that required them to become significantly more precise about their own teaching methods. These conversations suggest that the real challenge of AI in schools lies in how we define learning goals, moving the focus away from the software itself and back toward the fundamentals of pedagogy. We see this tension in the way prompts are constructed. A vague request like "make a lesson on cells" usually produces a generic, unhelpful result because the instruction lacks professional depth. In contrast, an effective prompt functions as a detailed teaching instruction. It provides context, identifies prior knowledge, and targets potential struggles. The output improves with professional constraints. By defining exact vocabulary and success criteria, educators force AI past generic summaries. This means that high-quality AI integration is a direct reward for high-quality lesson planning. For years, schools relied on polished, take-home final products to prove a student understood the material. AI has made those products, like the standard research essay, much harder to trust as evidence of actual thinking. Some schools try to counter this with AI text detectors, but these tools are often inaccurate. Relying on them creates a culture of suspicion, prioritizing catching students after the work is done. A more durable solution requires a structural shift in how we design assignments, ensuring that the student's reasoning and problem-solving process is clearly visible from the very first day of the project. This involves building in oral checkpoints, reviewing annotated drafts, and explaining their logic in person. This shift identifies a specific weakness in assessments that focus exclusively on the final product rather than the process of getting there. Teachers are now finding the most value at the edges of their workload. AI can draft initial feedback, rewrite complex explanations into simpler language, or generate multiple versions of a practice set for different reading levels. There is also a significant equity component. For students who don't have support at home, AI can act as a coach for mock interviews or help structure their first job applications. However, this efficiency depends on a non-negotiable boundary. The teacher must remain the final verifier, checking every output for accuracy. Skipping this allows for confident hallucinations, incorrect explanations, or overly complex solutions that ignore the actual needs of the students. The goal is to use these tools to reduce the volume of repetitive work without surrendering professional judgment. We are currently in an environment where generating a finished product, whether code, a lesson plan, or an essay, is faster than it has ever been. This speed creates a cognitive risk. When a student uses AI to jump straight to the solution, they bypass the struggle required to actually retain and understand the material. This applies to every subject. A history student needs to weigh evidence, a programmer needs to debug their own logic, and a writer needs to shape their own meaning through language. These risks are compounded when AI adoption is left to chance. Without clear leadership, some students receive safe, expert guidance, while others are left to use unreliable tools without any oversight. Since finished products are now easy to automate, the future of the classroom depends on how much we value the visible trail of a student's thinking. To protect that thinking, many educators are adopting an analog-first framework. This approach recognizes that the most effective learning often happens when students slow down and work without a screen. Group discussions, handwritten notes, and direct peer-to-peer interactions remain the most reliable ways to ensure that students are actually wrestling with difficult ideas. The protocol is straightforward. Establish the learning goal first, and only introduce AI if it actively strengthens that goal. If it acts as a distraction from the thinking, it stays out of the lesson. In disciplines like music, science, and history, the objective is human performance and interpretation. The value is in the act of doing the work, not just possessing the result. Handing off the operational burden to AI allows teachers and students to return their full attention to the human elements of education: creativity, reasoning, and connection.